Hello, everyone, and welcome to Franz's Real Estate Facts, episode number 20. I realize that I've kind of been a little bit missing and out. I've been busy. So that is why we have missed a couple of episodes, but I am now back and I should be pretty consistent moving forward. And I am here today with the awesome and amazing Angela Anderson, who is a photographer. She's specifically a portrait photographer, and she has taken photos of me, and I really enjoyed the photo shoot. So thank you for taking photos with me, Angela.
No,
Um, and she's also just like a really cool photographer. And when you were taking pictures, I remember one of the things that you did, you were talking about like, oh, this is the lighting, and oh, this is the, you know, lens, and you switched out the lenses a couple of times and you wanted to like move the flash around. And I'm like, you know who'd be a really cool person to come and talk about stuff? Angela Anderson, to talk about pictures and taking photographs, specifically taking real estate photographs. And obviously, as everybody already knows, because I've said this a bunch of times, I am a real estate agent. Um, but in addition to being a real estate agent, I really just want people to like have information about real estate. And if they want to sell their own home, I want to give people the tools that they need to sell their own homes for the most money they can, and really just to do it right. So I thought a really good topic would be to have a professional photographer, portrait photographer, but nonetheless, you're a professional photographer, and I'm sure you can photograph things other than people. Talk about what do you need to do so that your photos, if you're selling your home, actually attract buyers as opposed to make them say, this is clearly taken from like a 1999 to maybe 2005 cell phone that's all scratched up, and this is terrible. So that is at least part of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk about some other fun things. So thank you so much for being with us, Angela. I really appreciate it. Um, so yeah, when people are trying to take photos of their home, what are some things that they really need to think about?
awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Frantz. It's fun to get to chat with you again. It's been a while. Um,
Yes.
some of the things that, well, as anyone who's going to help you with staging your house is going to say, less is more, right? Get rid of the clutter, get as much out of there. And then when you think you have enough out, go and get more out. Like you want
So
it to be
true.
clean, simple, open lines. One thing that people don't think about sometimes is when they're photographing, they will leave things like their appliances, their blender will be sitting on the counter, or they'll have a family photo in the background that they don't remove, or maybe like some, the ashtray that their 5-year-old made 10 years ago, whatever, will be sitting out. And so you want to really have an idea as you're photographing what's in the background. What are you getting? Because when you take the photo, you're looking at whatever it is you're focused on, but the photo is encompassing all of these other things. So you want to make sure that you take the photo and then look at it. Okay, oh shoot, I forgot to take that family photo down. Let's take that down and do it again. Or, oh my goodness, there's cables sitting out here from the TV. Let's tuck those back behind. So you really want to pay attention to the details, to all the little things. Um, you had talked to me when we were shooting about lenses, and I thought that would be really cool to bring up.
Mhm.
So a lot of people will use a fisheye lens when they're photographing their house because they think that it's cool and artsy and whatever. But the problem is that lenses, they are not flat. They're curved, okay? And so a fisheye lens looks like this, but then it has this really like a huge curve to it. So anything on the ends of that fisheye, while it will open up and you'll be able to see a lot of the room, it's all going to be distorted. So all of your
Mm.
straight lines, they're all going to go like this to points. And it's just going to look really weird, and it's not flattering for home photos. So you want to think about what lens are you using. You want to use a wide angle lens. Anything from 18 to about 30 will be good. But keep in mind, so the smaller the number is, the more open the lens is, and the more of the scene you can see. Okay.
Mm.
So if you're at an 18, you're like this, where you're looking through this window and you're seeing all of it. But if you're shooting at like a 50, you're like this. Okay. And so all you can see is what is showing through that lens. So you want to be wide so that you can get more of a big picture of the room instead of just the little tiny details, right? You don't want to just see the desk or or the couch or whatever. You want to get a feel for the layout of the room. So shoot with an 18 to 30 lens, but also keep in mind, the smaller the number, the wider the lens, the more distortion there will be, because there is that curvature of the lens. So just
Mm.
pay attention. It'll always happen towards the outside edges. So when you take the photo, be aware, is it curving unnaturally? Is it looking weird? Like, you want to make sure that your lines aren't so, I mean, you'll have some, the lines will change a little bit because of the distortion, but you don't want it so crazy weird that it just doesn't, people look at it and are like, that's not right.
Right.
So yeah, the lens choice is a big one. And then keeping less is more. Just get out all your clutter, get out all your personal stuff. Don't leave anything sitting out. Like, you want to show the marble countertop. You don't want to show the blender.
Right.
Everything off of there so that you're really showcasing the beautiful features of your home. Another tip would be, don't focus on the decor. All the decor is going with you. I mean, if you have a $10,000 couch, that's great. Let it be in the photo, no problem. But don't focus on the couch. Make sure that the focus is anything that stays with the home. So it is good to get a couple of close-up photos if you have special details that are really selling points for your home. Let's say you have some upgraded crown molding, or if you have, like I was saying, like the marble countertops, or if you have a really cool faucet or whatever, but you don't want to focus the details on anything that's going to leave, because then that's not attracting your buyer. That's your buyer going, oh, I wish I had a decorator like them, not, oh, I
Right.
want that house.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that is super helpful. The Again, I'm not a photographer. I really don't know anything about photography. But yes, the information about the lenses, super helpful. And it's really interesting. I know this as a real estate agent, and also when I'm working with buyers. Sellers want to make their home look like as awesome as possible
Mhm.
in the photos, and they want to make everything look as great as possible. The reality is, if your house looks better in the photos than it does in person, what's going to happen is buyers are going to come to the house, be like, oh, this is so great, and then they walk in and they're like, felt a lot different in the photos. This
Yeah.
doesn't feel right. Whereas if you have photos that are like as faithful to the space, or maybe a little bit less faithful, like maybe the photos make the place look a tiny bit smaller, right? That means the buyer walks in and they're like, okay, I like this house, and then they walk in and they're like, oh, this is so much nicer than the pictures.
Yeah.
So that's really something to think about. Like, try to be as faithful as possible, and if you can't be completely faithful, try to make it slightly less, not slightly more.
Yeah.
Because if it's slightly less, people are pleasantly surprised. If it's slightly more, they're like, this is disappointing.
This is not what I was signing up for.
Exactly. And I mean, I really see that with rooms and room dimensions. And it's just like, the distortion. Sometimes people have, I don't know, something in the room and it just gets distorted and it looks really big, like
Yeah.
I don't know, you use the couch, so it could be a couch, it might be a bed, it could be a dresser or something, and so the dresser or the furniture looks bigger than it is in the photo, and so then you walk into the room and you're like, oh, this room is much smaller, but
Right.
like this was distorted, and that's just disappointing.
Mhm.
um so if you really want to sell your own home and you want to take your own photos, then it's important to try to be faithful
Yes. And
to
one of
the
the
rooms.
ways you can do that is with lighting as well. So
Hmm.
it's really good to make sure you're using natural light if you have it. If your home has natural light, turn off all the yellow incandescent lights all over the house and just open the windows and flood it with natural light, because that really highlights the beauty of the home without making it look distorted and unnatural. If you don't have natural light, turn on all the lights. You can have light, but if you have the choice to use natural light, absolutely flip off your lights, open those blinds, fill it with natural light. It looks much better.
Do you have any advice about like time of day? Like, is it better to do it in the early morning, in the evening? Like, I know some photographers do like dusk twilight shoots or whatever,
Right.
which look really
Yes.
cool on the outside. On the inside, I'm like, I don't know. But
Exactly. You really want to avoid, so when you're actually going to do a photo shoot outside somewhere, people will say use golden hour. That's the 1 hour before the sun actually sets, where the light gets really soft and glowy, and it's all, it's beautiful for skin on people outside. Not so much when you're trying to fill your house with light, right? Because everything's going to be yellow, which you're not going to like because it's going to totally distort the color temperature of the room, and you're not going to have enough light. So as far as like, is there a best time of day? Part of that's going to depend on what direction your house is facing. Are you getting eastern light, northern light, southern light? Where is that at? It's going to depend on the weather. Is it cloudy? Is it bright and sunny? Like, what is happening that day? So my suggestion is you want as much light as possible. So if you're shooting on a cloudy day, you're not going to be able to fill the houses with light as much. And so maybe you wait till the next day, or maybe you kind of watch and you do it like right at noon when there's the most possible sun, if that makes sense.
mhm.
If you're shooting on a normal sunny day, maybe at noon it's a little harsh and it's a little too much. So then you want to kind of pay attention, take some test shots, try it at 10, try it at noon, try it at 2, see what direction of the light coming in and the quality of it and how it makes things look, because you'll have different highlights in different areas, things like that. So in general, I would say sometimes between the 10 a.m. and the 2 or 3 p.m. time frame. Also, the time of year is going to make a big
Yeah.
difference too, because if you're in the winter, then it's going to be dark longer and get dark sooner. So just when you have that optimum, like the sun is really bright and it's coming in and you're able to just flood the area with light.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And also, like you said, windows, like some places have skylights and windows along the roof line, and some places have regular windows. So all of those things uh, make a difference.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, so thank you for that sort of advice for people who want to take photos for themselves. And I also wanted to give you an opportunity to highlight some of your own skills as a portrait photographer. And I think, I definitely know that one of the things that people love to do when they first move in their home is put up pictures, especially if they have like, they want to put up pictures of themselves, they want to put up pictures of, people that they care about. And sometimes they do photo shoots just to put up photos of people that they care about in their home. So when
It's
you're
a great
taking,
idea. I support that.
yes, I know, and you take lovely photos. Um, but when people are trying to, take photos to put up in their home, or portraits at least to put up in their home, what are some things that they should think about? Like what matters for a
Okay.
portrait in a home?
So I think the most important thing to keep in mind, and this is going to sound like it's totally non-related, but trust me, it is what's called the aspect ratio of the photo. So yeah, I know I knew that was going to be your reaction.
Yeah. What's the aspect ratio?
So an aspect ratio is the width by the length, right? The ratio of, is this a 1-to-1, which would make it a square photo? Is it a 2-to-3, which would make it more of a rectangle photo? Is it a 4-to-5, which would be the same ratio as an 8-by-10, which everyone's pretty much familiar with, right? So most cameras innately photograph at a 2-to-3 ratio. So if you know the area that you want to put your photos and you know that it's long and thin, and maybe you want to do like a nice panoramic photo, you need to keep that in mind. You're not just going to go click and have that be the right, it's not going to be a nice long and wide photo. So if you can take photos of the walls and the space that you want to end up putting your wall art and give those to your photographer, then your photographer can go, oh, okay, you want a photo that's long and wide, not one that's just the normal 2:3 ratio. So they can back up, they can give plenty of room so that they can crop
Mm.
and get it just right. Otherwise, what happens is you take that normal photo like this, and then they're like, oh, well, I want a 10:30 photo. Well, then you're going to crop off the head and the feet. It doesn't work that way, right? And so by having an idea of what space you want to fill with images and then making sure that your photographer is aware of that, they can then shoot to be able to get those correct aspect ratios for you. Otherwise, if you just let them go and do their thing, and then afterwards you're like, oh, by the way, I really want it to be long and wide, they're going to be like, yeah, well, we can do that. You're just missing a head and feet. So,
Exactly. A beautiful torso shot.
exactly. Right. And then the other thing really is to be aware of your color scheme. You don't want, if let's say you have all of your walls are decorated and painted in pastel colors, then you don't want to show up wearing neon, right? You want to make sure that the wardrobe, that everything kind of works together. So not that it has to match, right? But you just want it to be in the same color family. So, you know, if your walls in the room that you're wanting to put them in are like earth tones, then stick with earth tones. If your walls are pastels, stick with pastel. So it can be any color in that color family, but just so that it's all cohesive and goes together. One tip that I actually learned that works really well with that is if you have a piece of art or even a piece of furniture in that room that you really like that has the colors, you can then go and say, okay, well, this artwork has teal and brown and, you know, all these things. And that way it helps you know, okay, those are all in the same color family. They all look good together. So, you know, dad, you wear brown, mom, you wear a teal top, you know, brother, you do this. And then it's all cohesive without being matchy-matchy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's super helpful. And I also see some of your lovely photographs in the background, and I may or may not be somebody that I know. Um, and I wonder, in terms of framing photos, do you have any advice on like framing photos or like things I mean, the aspect ratio obviously matters for the frame because you can't put like a long and thin photo in like a tall and wide
Right.
frame. But are there any other things that people should think about in terms of framing photographs?
Yes. So the biggest thing is a lot of people will just go to Hobby Lobby or Walmart or Target or whatever, and they'll just get an 8x12 and slap it in and it's good to go. But the problem that we don't think about is sun. Sun really degrades the photo. If your photo is in light at all, even not in direct light, but even in indirect light, over a few years, that photo is going to start it's going to start losing its color. The paper will start to degrade. And if you have spent a lot of money getting this beautiful photos of your family, why would, you know, you want that to last for generations. You don't want it to just degrade. So when framing, I always tell people go to an actual framer if your photographer can't do it for you, and make sure that they're using some kind of UV protectant glass or museum quality glass or something, because you
Mm,
have to think about the light, the sun, and you have to think about the moisture, especially out in California, right? It's like 80%
right.
humidity all the time. That affects the paper that the image is printed on. So what I actually do for my clients is I have the image printed and then sealed inside the frame with museum quality UV coated glass. So that sucker is going to outlive them and their kids, because there's no light going to get in and there's no moisture going to get in to degrade the photo. So.
Hmm. That's super helpful. Um, So let's see. So we talked about portrait photography. And also, do you have anything in terms of like posing or when you're looking for a portrait photographer, other than just saying, okay, yes, Angela is awesome and you should work with Angela? Like, what are some things that people maybe should think about when they're looking for a photographer generally or a portrait photographer specifically?
Okay, well, so the biggest thing to me, you have to like the person. You have to feel comfortable and confident with that person, right? Because being in front of the camera is extremely vulnerable. You don't know what you look like, and you have to trust that that person is capturing the best version of you. The second thing, make sure that person directs you. If you're hiring a photographer who does not know how to pose and does not know how to help you and direct you into getting that best version of yourself, then you're going to feel more scared, more nervous. You're not going to know what you're doing. Whereas if you're with someone who's telling you, okay, that looks amazing, but bring this shoulder up just a little bit. Okay, bring the chin forward, right? Let's get rid of that double chin. Push the chin out, push the forehead down. So you want someone who knows how to recognize the angles of your body, because when we look at each other, we see each other in 3D. So our brains have enough information to know, okay, that they're not really a square. They're a three-dimensional being. But when you're looking at a photo, it's two-dimensional. And so shadows and light make such a big difference as far as making someone look the way they actually look or distorting the way they look in the photo. And so you want someone who knows lights and shadows, who knows how to really flatter who you are, not change who you are, but capture the best version of who you are. So
Right.
that would be my tips as far as looking for somebody.
Awesome. That's super helpful. And like I said, I did a photo shoot with you. You were super awesome and you're very friendly, and you do definitely exactly what you described, which is like, oh, this looks really good. Like bring your chin out, or like, move your shoulder this way or whatever. And so it's really, really helpful to have that kind of guidance.
Mhm.
Um, and also, I really just want to say you are incredibly knowledgeable just about photography and lighting and shadows and all of that sort of information. So I really, really, really appreciate your time and your willingness to be on the show and just talk about
Yeah,
your nerdy interest in photography.
I know, for real, right? It's the techno geek in me.
Exactly. And I mean, I'll be like super nerdy about real estate or law or stuff like that. So it's really great to find guests who are super nerdy and into whatever they talk about,
Yeah.
because that energy is definitely contagious. So the last question that I always ask my guests is, if somebody watched this and they love you and they think you're as awesome as I think you are, how can they get a hold of you?
So my website is Angela Anderson Photo. But of course, like everyone else, I do not update it as often as I should. So Instagram is probably the easiest, and I'm Angela Anderson Portrait on Instagram. Super easy.
Uh, I'm doing this. Awesome. Well, that's really great. And I just got to say, you've got two lovely portraits in the back, who is also another photographer that I know, and that I've also met. And yeah, those are really awesome photographs. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And next week, I'm sure we will have another awesome and interesting guest talking about something real estate related. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.